It's time! It's time! You like that? You like that? Woo!
It's Waxing Lyrical, baby.
Hello, Waxers, and welcome to Waxing Lyrical, Mainz and Dutts. I'm your host, Mainz, and my colleague in a danger zone in Rainford. It's Mr. Neil Dutton. How are we, Neil?
I'm very well. Yourself?
I'm good. I'm super excited because we've reached interview season, and there's no better way to start that than speaking to the absolutely magnificent Mark Schofield, talking all things quarterbacks and Formula One and Newcastle United Football Club.
I think I can say this without fear of contradiction. We have never spoke about Formula One in our long run of podcasting.
Do you know why?
Yeah.
Because neither of us can stick it, because we both find it super boring. However, that seemed perfectly reasonable even 3, possibly 4 years ago. But the world, for whatever reason, and the reason that being Netflix, has fully embraced the Formula One life. Whereas I'm like, isn't the dude with the fastest car always the one who wins?
Yeah, I mean, they're the Americans, who obviously we talk about when we say things have taken over. Their previous foray into motorsports was just turn left, guys.
Yeah, turn left in a truck. Now they're talking about downforces and G's and pit stop strategies, and we'll not cover any of that with Mark, but we will ask him questions related to it. We'll obviously talk about small quarterbacks, large fast quarterbacks, Kentucky quarterbacks, and all things in between. We'll also then kind of do a recap of free agency as it stands now, but more in the guise of where do we stand after the first week and a half, 2 weeks of free agency in terms of who we believe are going to win all the divisions, teams that could make the playoffs who we haven't named, and the worst 2 teams in the league. Spoiler alert, one of them plays in Arizona. Neil, without further ado, let us get Mark on the phone, mainly for our benefit, to talk about all the quarterbacks and what we think of them, but mainly for Mark's benefit to talk about how he's embraced the world of Formula One. And joining us now, it wouldn't be an off-season, it wouldn't be a draft season, it wouldn't be time to talk quarterbacks without getting our quarterback guru, Mr. Mark Schofield, on the phone. Mark, how are we?
I'm doing well, gentlemen. It is great to be here for our yearly chat. Excited. I'm also excited because, look, Newcastle. I mean, I'm not saying...
We will get onto it. We will get onto it, Mark. You do not worry. It is there. But weirdly,
this is the same Newcastle though that did lose to Sheffield Wednesday though. So maybe
that didn't happen. I'm moving past that. I'm just moving past that. I'm focusing on the fact that they're just a couple of points out of third now. Yeah. I mean, I'm trying not to get my hopes up. As a sports fan, my hopes have been crushed so many times over the years. But it's the table is tantalizing at the moment. I'll just say that.
It must be so nice for a Patriots fan to finally have something to look forward to in sport.
Exactly right. Exactly.
Certainly don't have football seasons to look forward to. I mean, let's be honest. If Aaron Rodgers ends up a New York Jet, the Patriots are the 4th best team in the East, and so at least I'll have some kind of football to look forward to.
It's like a yin and yang approach to sport.
Yeah, I mean,
basically
I don't know if you
swap
remember,
positions, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you remember Seinfeld, right? Like there was an episode where Seinfeld was even Steven. Jerry was even Steven. He loses a 20, finds an old 20 in an old jacket. Now, for me, look, Patriots are here. Now they're down here. Newcastle was down here. Now suddenly they're up here. I mean,
this is the thing. And we'll do the Newcastle thing first. So I assume, when we get you on now, do we have to poke fun at you for the Patriots now rather than Newcastle? Because Newcastle are now the quote unquote franchise to follow, and the Patriots are I don't know, like it's 1975 again or something.
They're like the Haas of the AFC East. Like it's painful for me now. Yeah, I think that's the joke. You have me on to talk Newcastle, just make fun of the Patriots.
We want to talk another sport though, before we get into the quarterbacks, which we will do. But we have noticed, and it's difficult not to notice, because the whole of the United States of America has been gripped by what me and Neil would describe as driving fast cars really fast syndrome over the past, I guess, 2 years to 18 months. What a piece of marketing work by Netflix and associated things. Where you've written about it, you watch it, you discuss it now. Where is it? Oh, look, there's Drive to Survive on Netflix. That looks quite interesting. I've enjoyed some of the other stuff. I'm going to watch that, and the next minute I'm immediately hooked. Or was it something you were casually watching, knew a bit about, and everyone's got involved, and now it's more prominent on US TV that you've now fully embraced it?
Yeah, I mean, I was an F1 fan well before football and all this stuff, all the sports writing. I mean, I was a Schumacher guy back in the day, and I've always enjoyed it. And what was interesting was, the Drive to Survive, the Netflix series, like certainly energized and tapped into a new emerging market. And I think, look, be honest, COVID had something to do with it. Like there were stretches of time when people were home looking for things to watch. And I think it's sort of re-energized, not just me as a sort of fan of the sport, because it sort of takes the helmet off, right? Takes the hood off, peels the cover back a little bit. I think that does help. But I also think that, I'll be honest, from a business perspective, one of the things now in my role at SB Nation is I'm, my job title, my business card or whatever says NFL writer, but I have free reign to write about whatever I want, and looking at the general traffic trends for a sports website, football, multi-sport, whatever, May, June, July, August are typically the quietest months. That's typically when F1 is like in the meat of their schedule. I mean, you've got, a lot of the F1 calendar hits those months. And yes, you have the summer break and things like that. This is an opportunity to sort of generate interest and build into that and tap into that. And it certainly doesn't hurt that, like, you've got 3 events in the States this year. You've got the Las Vegas Grand Prix, which is going to be an event. I mean, Saturday night on the Strip, like, that's going to be a spectacle. And I mean, when you're watching F1 testing, they've got all their representatives out there. They're passing these bedazzled, jeweled jackets out for the Las Vegas Grand Prix. They're turning it into a thing. And so, from a business perspective, from F1, obviously, look, they want to get into the United States market. They've been trying for years, and it seems like they finally have an opportunity to do that, down to outlets. I mean, The Athletic has beefed up F1 coverage, Washington Post, New York Times. Now we're doing it. Like, it's an emergent growth market in the sports media world. And so, look, as we were saying, look, we're all day to day, if someday, somebody comes along and says, hey, Mark, the football stuff isn't quite working out. It's like, well, I got another club in the bag now, so it's always nice to have, but it's fun to watch. And what I love about, because my 2 main coverage points now are NFL and F1. And what I love about the F1 world is the teams get it. They get that it's a business. They get that content creation helps them. One of the things that I've always been frustrated by the NFL is, shutting down Twitter accounts that post clips and things like that. F1, they hand you this stuff. Like, I'm a nobody, like, in the F1 world. I mean, I'm a nobody generally, but I'm a nobody in the F1 world. But yet all the teams, after everything happens, they blast emails to me like, hey, here's quotes from Lewis Hamilton, George Russell, and Toto Wolff and Andrew Chauvin about what happened at qualifying, what happened at practice. We know you're going to copy paste it into an article. Here you go. Here's McLaren's. Here's AlphaTauri's. Here's Red Bulls. Like, I'm a newbie in this, and I've got Christian Horner quotes in my email box whenever I want them. And you can find them other ways, but the fact that they want you to write about it, they want you to cover this stuff. it makes it a huge difference. And so it makes it easier for, certainly us stateside that, like, I'm not going to get to Bahrain, I'm not going to get to Jeddah, but, now I've got quotes to use and I can form stories around that. So it's been a blast to get into. People are digging it. It was funny being at the Combine with a lot of football writers being like, who let the F1 guy in here? Like, this is not a football writer. It was funny being at Lucas Oil on Saturday, watching the quarterbacks throw, but writing about Lewis Hamilton and getting made fun of for that. But it's been a joy to get into. I love it. I love the sport. And a lot of what I love about F1, it's similar to what I love about football, the strategy, the sort of X's and O's of the F1 world. It's what I love about football. So it's been a ton of fun, and I love doing it.
Can I ask you a question quickly before Neil jumps in? There's in the UK especially, it seems that there's two types of people in the world: people who hate Max Verstappen and people who don't exist. Is that the same in the States? Because that guy is about as popular as COVID was early 2020.
Yeah, I mean it's fascinating. Like, I get very much a Tom Brady vibe from Max Verstappen. I mean, watching Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, and when he's at the end of that race asking the pit, like, hey, what's the fastest lap time? And they're like, look, we're not concerned about it. It's like, but I am. I immediately was like, that's Tom Brady. Like, that's Tom Brady right there. And you either love that guy or you think he's the absolute worst thing to happen to your sport. And I think there's a lot of carryover. Like you said, Paul, like, yeah, I think there are a lot of people that either love Max Verstappen here in the States or hope he loses every race. I mean, and that's part of success, right? It's like that Batman, the Harvey Dent line. You either die a hero, live long enough to beat the villain. Like a couple of years ago, like Max Verstappen's like, hey, upcoming new driver. But that ever since, the end in a couple of seasons ago, and now their dominance last year and at the start of this year, it's like, all right, enough. Like, and I think that's why there's a lot of excitement about Fernando Alonso this year, because it's different. It's something, not that he's a new driver, but to see him challenging for podiums again, to see Aston Martin, currently sitting tied at second in the constructors, I think that's good for the sport.
The other thing I'll just say quickly, Mark, before we actually get on to, why we really got you here is, July the 15th to July the 30th this year, Major League Cricket.
Yeah.
So there's something else he's right about.
James Dater, our good buddy over at SB Nation, who I absolutely love. I mean, I love everybody that gets to work with the man over at SB Nation. It's been such a joy over there. He's a huge cricket guy, because he's Australian. And believe me, we had a meeting today about some tentpole things we have coming up. Obviously, look, NFL draft, which is, the main reason I'm here. Obviously we got Women's World Cup, but James was like, hey, well, we got cricket coming up. So, yeah, and that's the great thing about SB Nation is that they let us write about what we want. I mean, I wrote about Ohtani versus Trout in the World Baseball Classic last night. We'll be writing about March Madness. We got that covered. I've written about hockey. I've written about, everything, which is fun because, obviously football is the first love and that's what I do most. But to be able to sort of branch out a bit and write about some stuff that I'm just genuinely passionate about, I would assume at some point you will get a Newcastle story from me. People have been pushing for it. I've been a bit reluctant because I don't want to jinx things. But at some point, that's probably going to come.
So the other week, the Carolina Panthers made the move to go from number 9 up to first overall pick. Now, there's some speculation that maybe they could trade the pick again. Bollocks. But, as soon as you heard it, who are they going up for?
My immediate thought was, I had a couple of immediate thoughts. The first thing I did, we were literally driving down for a weekend out of town with the kids, and the trade went down, and I knew it was coming. I was afraid it was going to come, and we're stuck in traffic on I-95, by where they're trying to build a new Commander Stadium, and I'm just like, you got to be kidding me. Of course it comes on that. So I immediately, as we're driving, I'm like, tell my wife, you need to text this person this question, because I'm texting everybody I knew down in Carolina. And I texted 4 different people. I got 4 different answers as to who they're drafting. So I don't think they know, or at least I don't think they knew at the time when they made this trade up. They came up, obviously, to give themselves the time to figure it out. And we're doing this show on Wednesday. They were I think they sent everybody that gets a paycheck to Ohio State's program. I mean, they had 14 people there, ownership on down. And so that was my immediate thought, honestly, after trying to find out who knew what, was this is for Stroud. Because as dynamic as Richardson was, you could feel the entire draft conversation shift underneath you that Saturday at Lucas Oil Stadium. Between his, we're watching the first set of quarterbacks and wide receivers do their testing, but off on the other side of the stadium, we're seeing Richardson do his vertical. And then you're seeing the numbers pop up on the phone. And you're getting the broad numbers on your phone, and you're like, this guy's having an incredible combine. Is he going to run the 40? And there's buzz around the stadium that he wasn't. But then we see him start working on his starts for the 40. And we're like, okay, he's actually going to run. And then he runs what he did. And you could feel the earth sort of move around Richardson's draft stock. So the fact that we left Indianapolis with a possibility that he was in the mix for one, and then Carolina comes up, you think, hey, maybe this could happen. I still think it's Stroud. The amount of people they sent to to Ohio State's pro day, makes me think it's Stroud. But what I love about what the Panthers have done is they have put so much in the way of coaching resources around the quarterback position. And so when I said earlier that I got 4 different answers, I got Young, I got Stroud, I got Richardson, I got Levis. 4 different people, 4 different answers. When I got the Levis text back, I was like, it could work because of what they've put around the quarterback position, because of the brain power they've put around the quarterback position. And before they came up, I mentioned James Danner, my good buddy over at SB Nation. He's a Panthers fan, because he lives in North Carolina. We would tease him, hey, it's Will Levis, and he would get upset because Levis is QB4. But we would soothe him by saying, look, they've put so much around the quarterback position that even if Levis falls to them at 9 and he's the pick, it could work. And so ultimately, I know there was a one answer. I think they came up for Stroud. I don't think they're positive that it's Stroud. They're going to all these pro days. They're going to get a look at all of these guys once again. I think because of what they've put around the quarterback position, whoever they pick has a great chance of it ultimately working out because of everything they put there. I don't think they trade out. I'm with you. Like the idea that they're going to come up and then try to pull this draft day Kevin Costner move or then move him back out. You've come up. Just make sure you get the guy. Like don't play around with it. Make sure you get the guy. I think whoever it is, it should work out because of what they put around the quarterback. But I think Stroud's the pick.
Is Stroud the pick based on one game, Mark? And that one game being the Georgia game where he actually showed the ability that people had not seen for him in the Big Ten, which was move, run, break tackles, all that stuff. Because there was a nervousness that Stroud was like, quote unquote, like the other Ohio State quarterbacks outside of fields, i.e. he stood in the pocket, did as he was told, Ryan Day's in your ear, you just throw it there, you throw it here. You've got flipping NFL wide receivers all over the place.
Right.
Are you able to make plays? Are you just a guy who just does stuff? Or are you actually the chef who's going to do everything?
Yeah. I mean, there was a sort of narrative about Stroud going into the playoff that he was basically a jugs machine. Like, he can put the football exactly where it needs to be, but he's not moving off that spot. I think as far as having a closing argument goes for a quarterback, Stroud's was the best. I mean, to put that game on film on that night, when, let's face it, it's New Year's Eve. Like, everybody's watching that game. To do it against that Georgia defense on that stage and to show that, no, I can create off the pocket, outside of the pocket, off the structure. I can make throws on the move. And I think it was interesting, John Beck, who scripted his pro day, he scripts a lot of these pro days now after what he did for Zach Wilson and some other quarterbacks. And I've talked to John a little bit about it. A lot of the throws that were in his pro day script were throws on the move. But that game, that closing argument, if he ends up first overall, that's a huge reason why. Because it was an incomplete box. It was a box he hadn't really checked. And he talked a lot at the combine about, my youth football coach told me I had to play from the pocket. My high school coach stressed in me, you have to be a pocket quarterback. You have to be accurate. Like, that's the most important thing for you. And he's like, looking back, do I regret not running more? Maybe a little, because these questions could have gone away. But I had some tough runs on film. I had some third down runs and some fourth down runs. And they're there, but not like this. Not in that kind of environment, that kind of setting, that kind of test from a Georgia defense that just won 2 straight national championships. And so I think if he ends up going first overall, that Georgia game is a big reason why.
It's almost like, as someone once said, without that game, we might be looking at CJ Stroud as if he was a baker and not a chef.
Yeah, exactly. And you see comparisons, and I'm not, the more I do this, the less I get into comparisons because there's such an inexact art. The comparison for Bryce Young is Bryce Young. The comparison for CJ Stroud. But a lot of the comparisons pre-Georgia were, more statuesque guys like Goff, like Flacco. I've seen some other comparisons, and it's like, yes, he's a very accurate quarterback, but he's your more throwback pocket passer. But then you see what he does against Georgia, and it's like, okay, he's more than that. Like he's to use the Baker chef analogy, like he's more of a chef than we thought. And I think there's still room in the NFL for Baker types. And I think at his core, he's been coached to be a very good baker. A baker would say chef-like tendencies, but he showed that ability against Georgia, which I said is going to be huge for him.
I've been watching a few of JT O'Sullivan, who we speak about again, a few of his cut-ups on YouTube and also on his Patreon channel as well about Anthony Richardson. And there is an awful lot to like from what we've seen of the quote-unquote modern quarterback, mobile, can make plays with his legs or whatnot. How much of it, from what you've seen or what you can deduce from it, how much of his issues with accuracy are glaring concerns, or how much can we put down to the fact that the offense he was playing on was an abomination last year?
I think there are two issues. One is the offense, as JT, who does such tremendous work. He's talked about that. And the other thing that's interesting is, people look at Richardson, people talk about Richardson, they say, look, he's raw. You might need 2 years. I look at it a completely different way. I think he just needs reps. I think he needs reps in a more consistent, solidly structured offensive passing game, because a lot of times when you see quarterbacks struggle with accuracy issues, the feet and the eyes aren't aligned properly. The feet are maybe pointed to the target, but the eyes are slow to come. And then the quarterback sort of tries to make up for it with velocity late, and it doesn't work. With Richardson, it's almost the opposite. Like, his feet are sometimes a little bit slow behind, but the eyes tend to be where they need to be, which tells me that, look, he's got it. Like, he's got the concepts and the coverages and all that stuff figured out in his head. It's just getting it all tied together. And I think that just takes time and reps. And, I mentioned his combine, and I saw a lot of pushback on social media and elsewhere that, like, 40.5-inch vertical, what does that mean? He's not jumping to throw. What it means is this. It means he's an explosive athlete. It means that when he gets to the NFL, if he's throwing a dig route and Colt McCoy is throwing the same route, Colt McCoy has to let it go like a second before Richardson does, because Richardson is such an explosive athlete that he can dial up velocity with the torque in the upper body, that explosiveness as an athlete. So it gives him that extra second to read stuff out. And if you go back, and the Allen comparisons are valid in this way in my mind. If you watch Allen as a rookie, like, I still remember he threw an out route left sideline at Lambeau Field from the right hash his rookie season, and waited until the last humanly possible second and still got that throw in there. That's what the explosiveness does for a quarterback. It gives you extra time to read stuff out. And so I think a lot of these issues with him, from a completion percentage standpoint, from an eyes and footwork and all that stuff standpoint, it's just reps. And he's got that explosiveness as an athlete, that easy, natural velocity as a quarterback, as a thrower of the football, that's going to give him more time to read stuff out of the pocket. So if I'm Indianapolis and he's there at 4, I'm drafting him, and I'm pretty comfortable playing him, maybe even week 1, just because I think you could construct an offense for him that he could thrive in, even as a rookie, even as he's sorting some of this stuff out.
Is it very much, if you start him early, is it very much following the same script as a Justin Fields last year and Jalen Hurts the year before? That
Yeah.
Here's one read, here's 2 reads. If they're not there, run. Get us 5, get us 10. Do you know what I mean? And you work the 1 read becomes 2 reads, becomes 3 reads, becomes the full route tree.
Yeah, I think that's exactly the roadmap, Paul. I mean, I think, Philadelphia certainly, obviously Shane Steichen's in the building now. in Indianapolis, but Chicago as well. And other teams have shown those sort of roadmap. Even looking back at some of the early Buffalo stuff with Josh Allen, it was, here's your half field read. It's 1-2. And if you don't like it, go. Like go. And there's another argument that sort of floated around there that guys like Richardson and others, the athleticism is the ceiling. Joe Ferriolo over at Inside the Pylon years ago wrote, no, athleticism sets the floor. Like, that gives you that extra card to buy yourself some time in the pocket, extend some plays when you need to, turn 3rd and 7 into 1st and 10 with your legs if you have to, give yourself more cracks at it. And so I think that's a big part of this too. And plus, look at 6'4", 244. Like, you can use him in the run game and not be too worried about him taking a beat and wear and tear on him. Like, you can use him. You know, we've seen him run through tackles. That LSU run, a lot of those tackles were kind of poor tackle attempts. But you look at the run he had against Florida State at the end where he's just pushing the pile himself. Like, he's a powerfully built athlete. So use him in the run game, get some favorable situations for him in the passing game, and just let him grow.
The opposite of 6'4", 220 would be me at 5'11", 180 / Bryce Young, 5'10". I ate 47 cheeseburgers the week before the combine, 204. Like, I'm not having that. Like, he'll be playing more my weight than 204.
But it's written down now, mate.
But it is written down as 204, and that's the point of the exercise, right? If that's
he
not
checked the box.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
The man was 75% water. He was like the planet Earth when he stepped on that scale at Indianapolis, but he checked that box. And look, I like Bryce Young a lot. I love the way he plays the position mentally, without fear, without feeling pressure. He's almost impervious to it at times. Multiple points of pressure, doesn't matter, moves around the pocket, navigates, makes creative throws off structure. I love what he does reading concepts out. His film is filled with looking off defenders, reading coverages, adjusting to things on the fly. I thought his Tennessee game was fantastic, even though they lost. He's an outlier. I mean, that's the sort of issue, you know? I think you have to make sure that you've got an offensive line in front of him that's going to help him. I think you've got an offensive system that's going to maximize getting the ball out of his hands quickly. You're going to pick your spots with him in the run game. You're not going to use him like Jalen Hurts has been used, or Justin Fields, or as we expect Anthony Richardson to be used. But I think the mere fact that he came in where he did, 5'10", 1/8 of an inch, 204, means that he's just an outlier, but he's not the outlier. Like, there was speculation that 5'9", 195, 192, like, that makes him the historical outlier in the NFL draft at 1-1 overall at the position. You know, now a general manager going to at least say, all right, he's in the Kyler range, he's in the Baker range. It's not outlandish. It's still smallish by historical standards, but he's not the smallest player ever drafted first overall. We're not drafting a slot receiver or a kicker sized player first overall. So I think that was big for him. You know, I think wherever he ends up, he's going to need aspects around him that some of these other guys might not need in terms of offensive line and protection. You're going to need to use him differently in the run game. You know, there will be a concern ultimately about frame and how he holds up, but with the way he responds to pressure, moves against pressure, makes plays outside of structure, he can protect himself.
In that sense, in the winners of the business of football, do you believe that Laramie Tunsil said that to Houston brass, that these guys are taking Stroud, you let me walk, or you send me to the Kansas City Chiefs, you're gonna get this kid killed, and
David Carr again.
Yeah, this is gonna be David Carr again, and you're all gone. So I'll take my $75 million over 3, please.
Yeah, I think that's look that, and I've seen some similar sort of speculation that was a window into what they expect they'll be doing with that second pick, because, you know, and to look at it a different way, I saw that, you know, some well-reasoned arguments that Chicago should stay and draft Bryce Young, because look, you're not sure. There's a good phrase, you know, if you're not sure if he's the guy, he's not the guy, go get the guy. And there's still an open debate about Justin Fields. Now, I was more in line with what they ultimately did, which was trade down and give yourself the future first-round pick. But if they had stayed at 1 and drafted Bryce Young, who's blocking for him? What do you put it around Bryce Young? And so I think to that point about Tunzel, it's like, look, if you're going to let me walk and you draft Bryce Young at 2, yeah, maybe when you are on the clock again at 12, you're going to get the OT you want, but it's not me. It's more of a mystery box situation. So you might as well make me happy. Now you get the guy to protect his blind side for the next couple of years as he develops, and we can roll ahead. And so I think that if you've got an idea that you're going to be drafting Bryce Young, you better make sure you've got a really good left tackle you trust.
So we've talked about like the top 3. So we come to the 4th guy, and obviously, being the 4th guy in a top 3 it's not the best place to be. Is Levis? Is it slightly unfair that he's not being as well thought of as the others, or is it justified from what you've seen?
I mean, I think it's relatively unfair, to be honest, just because, in some years I've come on and I've said, look, this guy's getting a lot of hype, but I don't see it. I don't see it. That's not really the case here. I think there are things to like about Levis. Obviously, the arm talent is there. His throwing session in Indy was a little bit up and down, like talking to some other people, watching it live. It's just like you could almost sense that he was trying so hard not to miss throws that he missed throws as a result. He's trying to, be too fine with it. Just let it rip. And I think on the moments when he started to push it downfield, you can see, okay, this is the arm talent. It's there. I think, 2 different offensive coordinators in 2 seasons didn't help him. I think what will help him is just the general overall offensive philosophy of like, yeah, he's running a sort of under center play action, drop back, set and reset and throw kind of offense. That's going to help him on the whiteboard. That's going to help him in some NFL circles. And I think that there are moments on film. One of the things that I liked watching him was you could see him make a mistake, and then you can see him sort of learn from it and not repeat it. But sometimes the initial mistake is just like a real head scratcher. You're just like, you've got to be better. Like, I think he had a moment against Mississippi where he's driving late and he just like doesn't let it go. And he ends up a strip sack situation and he's 1st and 10, like throw it away, like situational awareness. Like those are mistakes that you don't want to see him making. But, if this were last year, he's probably QB1, no questions asked. And I think there's an open debate and an argument to be made that he should have just come out last year because he might have been the first quarterback drafted. I think this year with Stroud and Young and Richardson and the excitement about those 3, it's kind of pushed him down the board a little bit, which I think is ultimately a little bit unfair. But I think wherever he ends up, if they put a good supporting cast around him and get good coaching in him, he could be a good NFL quarterback.
Is this a situation where location matters? And what I mean by that is, if you're Bryce Young or you're CJ Stroud, you will always have a good roster around you. Now, Florida for a period of time have been crap, but it's still Florida, right? Whereas Kentucky, 2 years ago, they were really good. For Kentucky, really good.
Right.
But last year, they lost all them players, and then you are a good quarterback playing with no players in the SEC, which basically is a recipe for you to get absolutely murdered or torn apart because your players can't get open. Your job, according to everyone, is to force balls into windows that don't exist to try and beat what will be NFL teams when you haven't got NFL talent.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of his story. And I think what will probably help him in some NFL like meeting rooms, conference rooms, as this process plays out, is there will be the let's get him on our team. Let's get him around with our talent argument that will be made. Is like, yeah, look at 2 years ago when he's got an NFL first-round receiver that he's got to throw to in Robinson. Like, look at what he's able to do. We get him in our offensive system with the guys that we have to throw to. You're going to see the best out of him. And so I think that's an argument that, like you said, location matters. That's an argument that's going to work in his favor, I think, ultimately. It's like, if you're a team that has a need a quarterback, like, Carolina or, even Houston with some of the additions they've made a wide receiver. You look at, get him in our building. He'll have better talent to throw to. We'll see the best out of this kid.
The question I've got, it's not about a draft quarterback this year, but it's one who has been drafted recently. Did Daniel Jones back the Giants into a corner? Basically, they had to pay him? Or do you think he could get better? Because it's still, while he was better in his contract year, which I'm always dubious of, it still seems a bit like, yeah, it's better, but it's still not great.
Yeah, I mean, look, there was almost a sense of they did everything they could to put him in a position to be successful. He ran the ball 120 times, which is a career high. There was a lot of, concepts in the passing game, concepts with the running back involved in the passing game, and Saquon Barkley, that really put him in a good place to be successful. But it's almost like they're, in a sense, hiding the quarterback position in a way. Like, they're not asking him to do a ton. They're making it easy for him, which is Brian Daboll's job. That's their job as coaches. That's Mike Kafka. That's their job. And so they deserve credit for that. I think the timing of it was such that, like, look, if they don't give him a deal and they use the tag on him, Saquon Barkley's gone. And with Barkley being such a huge part of what they were on offense, they were kind of backed into that situation where, look, we're going to have to pay Daniel Jones. And then we can use the tag and figure out something with Barkley down the road. And they're also because they made this playoff run, it's not like they could draft somebody. And so you put these pieces together, and it's like, if you're Daniel Jones and you're his team, like his agents, you've won the lottery 3 times over, basically, because of all these forces coming together to where the Giants were in a position where you couldn't really walk from him, because I guess they could have let him go and tried to figure it out on the open market and via the draft, but you're not in a position to draft somebody because he's gotten you to the playoffs. You have to figure out something with him to keep Barkley and all that stuff. So it all just fell together perfectly for Daniel Jones and put the Giants, like you said, are sort of in a position where, okay, this is what we got to do. So we'd have to pay the going rate for a good NFL quarterback now, even though he may not still be a great NFL quarterback. He's a guy that they put the offense together for, that got them to the playoffs, exceeded all their expectations. They're a year ahead of schedule, and that's all great and good. But now they're going to have to see if it works with teams having a full year of Daniel Jones under Brian Daboll film.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, if it is the wrong decision, ha 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 ha. So
right, yeah.
Everyone on this call should be made up with said situation of the New York Football Giants stinking, because that's what they should do. Final question before we let you go, Mark. It's early September of 2023. It's a random Thursday. It's 7:00 in 7:00 where you are in the States. They draw out Champions League Group B. You are the third team out of said group. Who do you want the other 3 teams to be?
Oh, dear God. Okay, that's a tough one. Honestly, my real response is it doesn't matter.
Correct.
I don't care who the other 3 teams are. The fact that they would be in a Champions League draw, the fact that, like, I would be having an actual reason to watch Champions League football with Newcastle United involved, I don't care. Like, put the 3 other best teams on the planet in that group. Doesn't matter. I will bask in it. You're talking to a man that laudably and blissfully, wistfully in a way, reminisces about the days of passports with Pardue. When they're playing like Europa League, and it's like they're playing, club, like they're playing at this level. Like, I will take Champions League football and just get obliterated in all 6 of their matches and just knocked out immediately just to say that they got in.
Well, see, you don't understand this, Mainz, and you don't know back when I was a bit more passionate and involved when Wednesday weren't as shit as they are. The sums I would have given just to see one game and hear the Champions League music once at Hillsborough, it would have been, that would have been fine. I don't need to win it. You've done it. You should be bored of it. It's you
don't get bored of winning the Champions League, and Mark,
I wouldn't know.
We hope that you get the opportunity to hear that Champions League music on.
I mean, I
believe it's CBS Sports next year.
To hear that around St. James Park, Like, my goodness. Now, yes, I know there are reasons to be.
Yeah, we
You know,
don't need to get into that, but
we don't need to get into that right now. But yeah, just to see that, hear that crowd in full voice the first time it happens, like, I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it. Amazing. So yeah, they can lose every match like 4-0. Doesn't matter. It's icing on an ice cake at that point.
Fantastic stuff, Mark. We will let you go. Enjoy the rest of your week.
You too, my friends. Always a blast.
And that was the wonderful Mark Schofield. I didn't have the heart to tell him that the only team that could stop him winning, getting in the Champions League, is probably mine. Luckily, we're shit. Neil, what we also wanted to do today, after talking to Mark and getting some, I think, frankly, amazing insight into those quarterbacks, and it's very different because we've had Mark on the last few years, and I'm not going to lie, he's been a bit down on those quarterbacks, but he seemed very high on these ones, which fills me with a lot of joy. What we wanted to look at was post-free agency, who we think are going to win divisions. We can then review this throughout the year. What do we think after the draft? What do we think just before pre-season? Blah, blah, blah. So I wanted to look at the kind of divisions that we always talk about, we always review, and look at them and say, who do we think right now is going to win that division based on what's happened between the end of the season and right now on the 22nd of March. So let's quickly go down that list and give our names out. So let's start, and you can go first. Who's going to win the AFC North, Neil?
The Bengals.
Yeah, I think there's no reason to suggest that the Bengals aren't the best team in this division. I find it really interesting that for a lot of the time we've watched the NFL, the Bengals have been a laughingstock. Even when he was slightly good, he was still a bit of a cheapskate laughingstock, and somehow they managed to pull out what I think is a really good signing of Orlando Brown by like a kind of, well, we'll pay you this much. I know you think you should be worth more, but no one's willing to pay you this, and we will actually play you left tackle. I know everybody else wants to pay you right, and you believe it's your birthright to play left tackle, and we'll support that, but we'll only pay you this much. Not a very Bengalsian thing, but it actually worked.
Yeah, they're just, his career is the window as well, as we forget.
Exactly. AFC East, Neil.
Dolphins.
See, I find this interesting in that, in theory, I understand the logic, right? The nervousness I have around it is the Tua Tagovailoa overall. Now, are they better with Mike White than they were with Skylar Thompson and Teddy Bridgewater? Clearly, yes, they are. However, are they good enough to beat the Buffalo Bills? I'm not 100% sure. I'm going to pull what can only be described as the S-bag approach to this division and stick with the Buffalo Bills. What me and Neil would like to highlight to everyone is who we're not picking, regardless of who their quarterback is. Whether he's there now or he's there in September, is the New York Football Jets. Because we have friends, people we love dearly as New York Jets fans. This is only going to end one way. And that is absolutely unadulterated, obliterating disaster.
Yeah, I don't like to spoil things for people, especially, the season is many weeks away and it has many weeks to play out. But if you do like spoilers of how the 2023 Jets season will look, go back and watch the 2008 Jets season.
And if you're unsure why those two things are linked, check out who the quarterback was and check out where they got him from.
Yeah.
Neil, who's going to win the AFC South?
I still think the Jaguars, because even though they haven't added a damn soul in terms of free agency, I think the team was making the right strides towards the back end of the season. Plus, you've got the addition of Calvin Ridley, who they got in a trade before his suspension was lifted. So I think we're going to be looking at a very defense-heavy draft. But I just think they're the most stable and probably most talented team in a division that still is a little bit meh.
Let's be honest. The Texans are picking second and the Colts are picking fourth. And I think they may both be better than the Titans by the end of the year.
Mm-hmm.
that would lead me to believe a team that has Trevor Lawrence for a second year under the same offensive scheme with a Calvin Ridley, who I've always liked a bit more than you, but we both like, means that I think this division is theirs quite easily. Neil, I'm going to go first on this one. Last year, I did that stupid thing, right? That Charlie Brown going to kick the football thing of, I'm going to pick the Los Angeles Chargers here because that's what I'm going to do. I'm not doing that again because I've felt right now deep into the Bill Belichick, New England Patriots process of, I'm going to pick the Kansas City Chiefs until the Kansas City Chiefs don't win anymore.
The Los Angeles Chargers tabled a rule change proposal at the owners' meeting, wherein a team that doesn't win their division but still makes the playoffs would get a home game if their opponent had, a worse record.
I like it.
That is the mindset of a team that has no plans of winning their own division for many years to come. Kansas City Chiefs until it's not.
Let's move on to the NFC. I think I mentioned this in the touchdown review that I was asked to pick. We picked a way too early Super Bowl for next year, and I picked the Detroit Lions versus the Cincinnati Bengals. I will continue to pick the Detroit Lions here to win this division, which could be for the first time, I don't know, since I've watched the NFL. It's probably not, but it feels that way. They managed to get the benefit of Chauncey Gardner-Johnson's agent not understanding the market. They've also signed some other players on defense, and although Jared Goff is their quarterback, they do have an excellent offense. So I'm going to pick the Detroit Lions.
If with one or both of their first round picks, they go defense heavy to solidify that unit, we've seen they've got, the offense can move the ball. They've got Jameson Williams, hopefully a year removed from his ACL, who's going to be a bigger part of it. It's no longer trendy to pick the Lions to win this division. It's a good time to point out that the only playoff game to ever be played at Ford Field was a Super Bowl, and that the Lions were not playing in it. So it's not trendy to say it anymore because everyone's saying it. But I'm going to say the Detroit Lions myself.
NFC East is a simple one for me. It's it's clearly the Philadelphia Eagles. Already starting to feel that Dallas Cowboys buzz, which makes me feel all warm inside. Like Mina Kimes and Field Yates are doing a pod where they're bigging up the Dallas Cowboys. I'm hearing interesting things about, that's a good signing by the Dallas Cowboys. That's a good signing by the Dallas Cowboys. Do you know an interesting stat about the Dallas Cowboys, Neil? That I believe for the past 6 years, they have picked someone up in free agency who's a former first-round draft pick. It's almost like their scouting system only works at one level. The Philadelphia Eagles are clearly the best team in this division. They kept Jason Kelce. They have Devontae Smith. They have A.J. Brown. They have Jalen Hurts. They, in your opinion, hopefully have a better defensive coordinator than last year. However, you have sent me stats that make you feel a little nervous about that, but I'm still picking the Philadelphia Eagles.
Mike McCarthy's now calling the offense of the Cowboys. I'm not scared of them. I'm not playing this game. Last year, I was dubious. I was keeping a lid on it. No, you do not scare me. Not in the slightest. Dan Quinn should be coaching this team.
Amazing. Neil is obviously picking the Philadelphia Eagles because he's not.
No, Washington.
We will come back to we will come back to this in May when the said team are owned by someone different. Until then, they shall not be spoken of. Neil, who's winning the NFC South in a what the balls is going on in this division kind of situation?
Whoever wins, it's just the fact that the other three lost more, I think. I'm going to say the Saints, but it was a close run thing.
I am picking the Carolina Panthers.
That's who my toss-up was.
Now, I think I allegedly said they were excellent last year, or close to being excellent. I can't remember. I said some.
You said great.
I said hyperbolic
great
word.
roster.
Yeah, I said a hyperbolic word, which is clearly false. What they have got is really good coaches,
Mm.
and Mark highlighted this. And they have a competent quarterback, professional quarterback in the room, and are going to draft one. So I'm going to pick the Carolina Panthers.
Do you imagine the situation the Panthers would be in if they'd taken up the Rams' offer for 2 first-round picks for Brian Burns?
Could you imagine the Rams' position if they would have got Brian Burns for 2
How
first-round draft picks?
How do you go from, we're going to give you 2 first-round picks for Brian Burns, to not 6 months later saying Jalen Ramsey for a third? Pfft, go on.
I have no idea. Let's move to that division, Neil. Who's winning the NFC West?
49ers.
Who's the starting quarterback week 1?
You. I don't know.
Does it matter? Sam Darnold.
Sam Darnold, yeah. We've shown it's quarterback proof. Their defense is still beastly. They're fine. They'll be fine.
Neil, 2 final things. Give me 2 teams who didn't make the playoffs last year, who you haven't mentioned yet, who have a chance.
I think the Panthers have got a chance just because of the weakness of the division, that they could string enough wins together to be, let's say, there's 3 wild cards. So I think they've got a chance. And they nearly won the division last year with Darnold and Donta Foreman and people like that. I mean, don't worry, I like Donta Foreman. I think it's a good story, but Dalton could be competent. But if they take Bryce Young and he comes in and outplays Dalton in training camp, they've got some nice pieces. They could still stand to take a wide receiver probably on day 2, because they've not got many picks. But it's a shite division. So, and we've seen in the past that can help propel multiple teams to relevancy. So I think they could do it. And another team, this is a tough one because the NFC is the NFC. Let's be honest. So anyone could sneak in because the division's that weak. So I don't really have any degree of confidence in this one. So I'll be a shithouse and say the Packers.
Oh God, if Jordan Love's good, they can get in the fucking bin. Honest to God, that team pisses me off. I'm gonna pick the Pittsburgh Steelers. More based on why not of it all. But yeah, where are we with Baltimore? Cleveland. AFC South? No, thank you. AFC East? Maybe, but only 2. I think people could argue the Jets. Do you sneak in? Can Mike Tomlin win 10 games with that roster? Probably. He's done it before, done with worse. So why not? The other one is interesting because if anyone's noticed, I have actually already picked 2 NFC teams who didn't make the playoffs last year to make the playoffs this year. So that means I would have to pick a third. That makes it almost impossible to do, Neil, because there's no teams left. But by process of elimination, I do not believe any of the NFC South teams are going to make the playoffs other than the team that wins the division. Sorry. I do not believe anybody in the NFC West is going to make the playoffs other than the San Francisco 49ers. I do not believe anybody in the NFC North is going to make the playoffs other than the Detroit Lions.
Oh God, he hasn't sold the team yet.
So I have made my pick, and we're going to move on. Which 2 teams, Neil, will be battling it out for the number 1 pick?
The Tampa Bay Buccaneers have embraced the tank by saying your quarterback competition is Kyle Trask and Baker Mayfield. It would not surprise me if Mike Evans was on the move leading up to the draft or maybe on the day of the draft. Maybe they see if they can entice some off business for Chris Godwin. This team needs to embrace the fact that the Brady experiment was great. It did what it set out to do, but it's over. So you need to start again. First one, the other one. This is a team that may have snuck up in some people's eyes in terms of the level of dysfunction they're actually operating on. And that's the Las Vegas Raiders. This is a team without a plan and with a head coach who's so firmly in the cocoon of the Patriot way that just look at the players he's brought in. You've replaced Derek Carr with Jimmy Garoppolo, Spider-Man meme. Jacoby Myers is okay, but is he not a redundant asset when you've got Hunter Renfrow? And Philip Dorsett, come on. Seriously. That's just he played for New England. That's all that signing is. So Josh McDaniels, it may surprise some people. Anyone who watched what he did in Denver might not be a very good head coach. Might just like to alienate his actual good players. Look what happened with Derek Carr and look what happened with Darren Waller. So this team sucks. The defense is not good. They've got Max Crosby. If I was him, I'd want out. If I was Devontae Adams, I'd try and force another trade. I think this team could seriously be awful. And it's not a division to be awful in because there's 2 games that you're not going to get that are easy outs.
I believe that you've missed the obvious answer here, and I understand why. The obvious answer here is the Arizona Cardinals. They've done absolutely jack. They don't have a quarterback. I don't think they're any good.
Thing is, though, I didn't want to say the Cardinals because it'd make it look like I was just trying to kick Gannon on his way down, and I don't want to come across as petty, bitter, and small-minded because I am, and I don't want to come across as that. But yeah, I mean, it's a lost season. It's a season that basically, Gannon has to be particularly confident that they've said, "Look, mate, this year, just do what you can."
And then I kind of briefly mentioned it before, but I'm really interested. I'm really interested in the Carolina Panthers. Sorry, not the Carolina, the Tennessee Titans of it all. That, what are they doing? What's the plan? I don't really know. And I'm really nervous that this could be the year they're bad. Now, I can't believe we've done this situation and neither of us picked the Los Angeles Rams. But
I was just about to say there.
But there you go.
If Matt Stafford, say if he comes in and his elbow isn't right, their offense is terrible. Their defense is falling apart. They could. I mean, this could be the Sean McVay. Did you come back to to re-energize this, or did you come back to put a bow on it? That you rose them up, you've taken them down again. They could be awful.
Fantastic stuff, as per usual. Always more exciting to talk about the shit bit than the good bit, but there we go.
We put it out there though. Who we when we think something's going to be bad, we do hold ourselves up for ridicule,
yeah, of course, right?
Abuse, content, bants. We do put it out there. We don't sugarcoat it. But if you don't think there's a world in which the Los Angeles Rams might be absolutely shite this year, you're not paying attention.
Yeah, just go and look at the defensive line roster that isn't Aaron Donald, and tell me you're not a liar if you know any of the names. Neil, that's it for this week. Great to be back. Great to talk to Mark. Great to find out about his reinvigoration on SB Nation with the F1, and to find about all the stuff with the quarterbacks.
I want to see him right now at cricket.
Yeah, well, you're going to have to get his Aussie mate whose name escapes me to do that, but we can sort that out. Neil, is there anything you're doing between now and when we will next hear from us in a week or so?
I've been doing some pieces on free agents for Rotoviz, instant reactions. Well, not instant. I've slept, pretty much after most of them bloody time difference. But you can go to Rotoviz, you can see I've written up, I've done an awful lot of Panthers writing. I've written up on Sanders, on Adam Phelan, on Hayden Hurst, Mike Gesicki, and what's the recent one I did? Oh, yeah, Dalton Schultz. So, yeah, done a bit of writing there. Haven't done anything for anyone else. Although, actually, I did do a piece for Player Profiler regarding their Breakout Finder app. And I looked at 5 surprises from this year's rookie class.
Fantastic stuff, Neil. I am at Maindy7 combined. We are at waxing_lyrical. Draft season SZN is upon us, and we will start to speak to some of our friends about what that means, who teams will pick, and who they should avoid. We've started with the quarterbacks, and we will continue on. Until next show, these top guys are out.